Hey everyone, it's Emily. Before we dive into this episode where we talk about choosing optimism in parenting, I wanted to read you an email that we received from our guest Phoebe after filming. We're sharing this email before you listen to provide some context on the reasoning why she makes the conscious decision every day to have this mindset. Dear Jamie and Emily, I so enjoyed chatting with you both today and appreciate the work you do so much. The conversation was fun and engaging, and while I hope it'll serve your audience, I wanted to add some additional context that I wish I could have shared live, but it felt a little too raw this week in particular. We spoke about the opportunity we all have to choose optimism over complaint, and I missed the chance to be fully vulnerable during our conversation. The necessity of living that way became real for me 6 years ago on November 12th, 2018, when my 23-year-old little brother passed away unexpectedly, hence my disdain for hospitals. The commitment to choosing optimism has become a survival mechanism for me that I've been practicing for longer than I've been a mother. But that, along with my focus on learning to control my thoughts and fears through hypnobirthing, has truly had an incredible impact on my ability to experience pregnancy, labor, and motherhood in a positive light, which is something I want for everyone. On the heels of Chase's Angelversary yesterday, I'm realizing I was still in a bit of self-protect mode and not able to share as openly on our live and my first podcast. This felt important to share with you in case there's any space or value in including additional context. And maybe there isn't, but you know. And again, I'm not just an eternal optimist and am no stranger to how hard things can really be. I appreciate you both and thank you for inviting me on. All right, let's dive into the episode. Hey everyone, it's Emily and Jamie, and we're back for another podcast episode.
We have one of our favorite people and longtime clients on the episode today, Phoebe. Hi, Phoebe.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to chat with you. I mean, we've chatted with you a million times, I feel like.
I know, it feels like we're just going to have another one of our many hangouts and conversations together.
Yeah, but excited for you to be here today and share a little bit about your story and your family. Do you want to just start, Phoebe, with just telling people a little bit about you, your family, like name, where you live, what your family dynamic is, so just people can understand.
I can do that. So I live with my husband, Jake, and my two boys now. It's still weird saying that, but I have Graham, who just turned 2, and Miles, who just turned 3 months. So it has been an adventure, a lot of good things to share, and we live down in the South Shore of Boston in a town called Norwell.
Amazing. And we were just chatting. The stage that you're at right now is like you're getting ready to transition back to work, right?
Yes, I have 1 month left. I am officially in that countdown, which always comes with a lot of
that 3 to 4 month range where it's
like
so hard too. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but it feels like such an unfair time to transition back because babies usually aren't yet sleeping through the night and they're still finding their way into a routine. And all of a sudden, like, bam, change it up again.
Or like the opposite, right, Phoebe? I don't know where you're at this very moment, but like, or the opposite of like, this is like when they start to become a little bit more enjoyable and engaged.
That is actually true.
And you're like, wait, I'm actually like starting to like maybe enjoy this a little bit more than I was, or coming out of the fog a little bit. And it's like, damn, I wish I could have more of that time.
Yeah, no, I feel it's all of it, right?
Yeah, totally.
I feel a little bit of, okay, I'm in burnout of like, I haven't had a break for 3 months. That like his 3-month birthday, if you will, kind of brought that realization to me of like, I haven't been able to step away. Yeah. And then it's like, but I go back to work in a month. So I need to cherish every moment with him. He is like the most enjoyable he's ever been. He's sleeping more, which allows me to be a better version of myself for him. So it's all of that.
Yeah,
for
love
sure.
that.
For sure.
Obviously the structure of the podcast this season, as you know, Phoebe, is we want to hear a little bit more about different people's stories to be able to share their different experiences and hopefully allow other people in similar situations to feel a little less alone or to validate feelings that other people are having. Knowing that's sort of what we're trying to get out of today, I'd love to just sort of pass it to you for you to start sharing a little bit about your story, or whatever part of your story it is that you want to share with people today.
Yeah, happy to. So I don't know that I can talk about my story without sharing that I'm a huge advocate and proponent for hypnobirthing. And I have a couple of reasons that that's important and relevant to my story. Yeah, cool. I had the most incredible birth and labor experience through hypnobirthing with my first Graham. He's the now 2-year-old. And thank goodness I tapped into it originally. My cousin exposed me to it. And I was like, I've heard a couple stories of people can't always, even if they're planning to get an epidural, it might not take. And there's all this unknown. Like as much as we plan for our labor, it ends up inevitably being a little bit different.
Totally.
And so I used it as a security blanket of, okay, if that happens to me, let me equip myself with the tools. I ended up getting really bought into it and successfully hypnobirthed with my first. Then you get into, okay, I'm about to have my second. I have a toddler at home. When is this going to happen? How do I find coverage? And people talk about the second labor happening a lot faster, which I kind of take with a grain of salt, because you never want to attach too quickly to something because everyone's experience is so different. I was living and breathing this. Graham came at 36 weeks and 5 days, and I was at 40 weeks and 5 days waiting on baby number 2. Like, how is this already so different?
It's so wild. And then when you did deliver a bit earlier the first time, you just, even though you know it could happen at any time, you mentally can't.
Oh, no.
You
You can't
stop
get past
battling that thought of like, another day.
Right.
How are they still in me?
Totally.
Yeah. We had canceled our entire July plans and nothing happened.
Yeah, totally.
So with that, I knew it could happen anytime. We were getting closer to that. Okay, am I going to need to start talking about induction? How far will the hospital and the midwife team that I was working with let me go? Because I kind of had really gotten hooked on this hypnobirthing and natural approach. Luckily, my water did break again at 40 weeks and 5 days in the middle of the night, which I hear is a very common thing with your second, because our bodies are really allowed to relax once our first is asleep and let the process happen. And when people say that your second could come faster, I never knew that it meant this fast. So why I'm so grateful for the access and the education that the hypnobirthing process and reading gave me. And I think just regardless of anyone's, thought or interest in having an unmedicated or a medicated birth, it's really educational. And I was so grateful for it, because my water broke at 12:15. I was checking in at triage at the hospital 15 minutes away from me at 1:30. As soon as someone came to give me coverage for my toddler, and Miles was born at 2:09.
My goodness. That is what we used to call in labor and delivery a drive-by delivery.
I almost had him in the parking lot.
Wow.
I almost had him in the triage room. And so with that, like, I never would have I was using my tools as much as I could. But there was no conversation of, do you want medication? Do you so just being able to go.
It wasn't even an option.
It wasn't even, I don't even know my midwife's name, quite frankly. It all happened so quickly.
I imagine at that point you were fully dilated and just holding the baby in to just get into a room.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I said, this needs to hurry up. Am I having the baby here?
Yeah.
And he was 9 pounds and 15 ounces. Like, it
Holy
was
shit, Phoebe.
a crazy experience. I still had my sports bra on.
I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about from a labor and delivery perspective.
Get your pants off, honestly.
Totally. I want to take just like one step back quickly, Phoebe, and I have 2 questions for you. The first is, can you actually just give people, I'm sure there are plenty of people who've heard of the term hypnobirthing, have heard about hypnobirthing, but like, can you actually explain it to people in like the terms that you understand?
Of course. So, and it might be different for everyone, but this is how I interpreted it. There's a great, like, just standard hypnobirthing book that's very educational that you can read and learn about basically how capable women's bodies are and how natural of an experience this is, that if we choose, we can really use hypnobirthing to support us in being, like, having this be our child's birthday and not having it be a medical event.
Yep.
I'm someone who hates hospitals and, like, didn't know that you could bring this type of experience into a hospital. And it really allowed me to feel secure in having both things, especially with my first not knowing what my body was capable of yet. But basically, hypnobirthing is something that you really just do. I fall asleep to a recording every night a couple months into my pregnancy, and it is all about tapping into your subconscious and being able to learn how to regulate through kind of a self-hypnosis meditative state to eliminate fear from your mind, because that's really what holds our bodies back from doing what they already know how to do.
Right.
And we just get so
Right.
caught up in the experience of it. And so it's a training basically that you can do at home. You can fall asleep to it, and you basically are just kind of able to use it to regulate as a pain management tool.
It's funny because we talk about this in pre-baby boot camp. One of the instructors who I have, and I'm sure you've interacted with her through various ways on our platform, but is Sarah Harmon, who's licensed mental health counselor. She's also a yoga and mindfulness instructor. And we have talked about this in boot camp and even just other things with Sarah related to labor. And this is the fear piece, right, Phoebe? Because like our bodies from an evolutionary standpoint, labor aside, right, are trained to view pain as a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is a sign of a problem or an issue or whatever,
which
right?
leads to feeling
scared.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of labor.
Right.
Right? Like that truly is. I'm trying to think of another exception in life. I don't know that there is. Like that's the only exception in life, is that pain, discomfort, whatever right verbiage we're going to use to describe it. Maybe we need to get away from the verbiage of like this, it being pain, right? But it is
expected.
There is a mindset tool, right? Meditation, mindfulness, right? That you need to shift. And this isn't something that's just going to like naturally happen in the moment, right? Like this is something you have to practice. It's a tool. It's a skill that you have to practice around training your mind and your body to understand that like there is going to be discomfort and it's not a sign of a bad thing, right?
Right.
It's normal.
Add too is that you mentioned before you got started on hypnobirthing the thought of like, well, I don't know if I would want an epidural or not. And really for like anybody listening to this, expecting a baby, there are these moments where we're like, and this goes on throughout parenting, well, I'm going to do this or that. Mm-hmm. Or it becomes like, this is my only option and I'm not looking at anything else. And when we teach like pre-baby boot camp or labor and delivery prep, whatever people's plans are, or maybe they don't know what their plans are, we are always talking about mindfulness, breathing, because even if you do want pain management, there will be plenty of opportunity to need to be able to tap into
these tools.
Right. So,
I mean, I was induced with all three of my kids and had 3 epidurals with all 3 of my kids. And with all 3 of my kids, there was a decent period of time where I was in pain and needed tools.
How about my third epidural took 90 minutes to work and I was probably fully dilated and I was refusing to push.
Right.
And I was like, better get this thing working. And I surely could have tapped into some hypnobirthing tools in that moment. Instead, I was tapping into the F word and hitting the side of the bed, which was probably very unproductive.
Anyway.
And that's just what I'm an advocate for, is just people, knowing that there are a variety of things that you can put in your toolbox to go in feeling confident, because so much is out of our control. And that's where it started for me. And I ended up, being really bought into it, but I really love it for everyone, just as an education as part of the process.
So when you had your second baby, did you go through the hypnobirth training again, or did you feel like you could tap into it with just by utilizing it the first time?
So because they're only 20 months apart, I didn't feel too far away from the training that I had did. The training that I did was a virtual course.
Okay.
And then just the at-home practice and the book.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, if you loved that course, by the way, too, we can share it and link it in the show notes for everybody to check out.
Happy to.
So then when you're looking at these, you said like in order to understand, like, talk more about your experience, it really started with like this training with hypnobirthing. What was the impact on that on your first delivery versus your second? And how were obviously timing wise, like they were vastly different. So I'm curious, like how did you utilize the tools differently with each of those labors? Or how are they the same and how are they different, I guess is the question.
Right. So yeah, aside from the length of time, I did try to tap into it as much as I could with my most recent labor. It just, there wasn't a lot of time, and like not, I instinctively just like needed to be more in a contracting state to keep the baby inside me until I was in a safe place to deliver.
Right.
But what never entered my mind was, oh my gosh, this is happening too fast and I'm out of control and I don't know what I'm going to do. So it did allow me to separate from that fear of, wait, I've been planning to have an epidural and like I'm not going to have time to now. And so it just really allowed me to stay confident and to know that I was capable. Granted, it was my second and I had already been through one labor. So I think I had an additional level of confidence of what my body was capable of. But again, it was a completely different experience. And so it just allowed me, I think, to stay present and to be in control as much as you can be, and to just know that you're safe and you have tools that, like, I didn't use them to the extent that I did with my first because it was a much longer experience, but it still served me, it just in a very different way. And that's what I love for people, is just like, again, just give yourself as many tools as you can lean on, because so much changes in the moment.
Yeah.
Do you find that you tap into some of that training now as a mom?
I was just going to ask that.
Okay, because I'm thinking about when Sarah Harmon does our mindfulness session in boot camp. When I listen as a mom of 3 at boot camp and she's talking to the expecting audience, my brain is sort of like thinking about how it is relevant to me right now as a parent.
Yeah.
So just curious to know if you tap into it postpartum.
I tap in through it throughout my pregnancy, throughout every day of mother. And I'm not someone who has any regular meditation practice. Like, this is completely baby mom focused work for me. My husband says, like, when you are pregnant, you're the best version of yourself. I enjoy my pregnancies. I've loved both my labors, and I do very strongly feel that babies feed off of our energy. And so because of that work that I commit to doing, I am genuinely able to enjoy it all. And I've seen that result in really calm babies. And I'm so grateful for it. And I don't know if it's a fluke. I'm not giving myself like all the credit. I don't know where it comes from, but I do feel like some of this work, there is a correlation. And like babies that have calm energy and they've both slept really well and eaten really well, and I think it teaches you when you're doing some internal work that you are capable. And I think it's all a confidence game, and like it's about trusting our instincts, and we're told that all the time. But we so doubt ourselves because we're like, we've never done this before, how can my instinct be accurate? But it allows me to like really believe in myself, and I think that's what this work brings to the surface for me.
I mean, it sounds like the validation comes from within versus seeking that validation from other people, right? And I feel like it's so easy in the culture that we live in, right? Especially with, social media and the internet, to seek out validation from others that you're doing the right thing, right? When I agree with you, Phoebe, like when I do think that most of the time, if not all the time, we have those answers within ourselves, right? Even, I mean, this about Emily and I, even when we talk to people, right? And we ask them a bunch of questions about what's going on and understanding like what their goals are and how we're going to get there. And maybe I give people 2 options, right? Like, okay, we could go with this plan or this plan. I'm sure you've heard this a million times from us, right? And what I usually follow that up with is like, what's your gut telling you to do? And it is, I don't know that I've ever had anybody reply back to me like, I don't know what my gut's telling me. I don't know what's right, right? Like I can almost always deduce from these conversations like probably what direction they are already leaning towards. Like you do kind of know. And so for this to be a tool that allows you to have that confidence and that validation within yourself, I mean, is worth, truly, it feels like it's invaluable.
And I can't speak more highly. I think that's of your program. My first year with you two, it was all about giving that validation of, the answer, but just having the backing of two moms and medical professionals be able to say, like, yes, green light, like, stick with that. Jamie, I'll never forget, all of my friends really relied on some of those traditional, like, schedule-based books, and I was feeling pressure to go by them. And I went on very early with Graham. I talked to you and you said, put the books down. I was like, it's counter to my instinct to follow this schedule.
Totally.
And you gave me permission to put the books down and to trust that. And like, that was such a foundational piece for me in learning how to be a mom and to trust that. And then to see that it worked, just you continue to get that validation, right?
Yeah. You mentioned,
I can totally hear you saying, put the books
down.
Put
the fucking book down.
Put the books down. But she'll have you pick up books. She'll send you some smut books. Light reads.
If you're reading, let me give you something that's worth your time.
Yes.
That will significantly improve your life. No, but you mentioned this. First of all, you said, I'm not trying to like take all the credit. For the record, take all the fucking credit, Phoebe. Like, right? Like you're raising these kids. You are feeling validated and confident. Like you have these kids who are like, more calm and are feeding well and are sleeping. Like take that credit, right? Like I think that's something that women don't do enough is like take the credit for the things that we have actually done and deserve the credit for. So let's do that. Let's also assume that this isn't a fluke, right? Like you have two kids that are pretty, I'm sure they're similar in some ways, right? And these things that we're talking about obviously are going to be very different in other ways. But when you're thinking about this approach that you've now used for two kids, having similar outcomes, what is thinking about this maybe not being a fluke, right? Like, what were some of the similarities with the postpartum experience that you had with each of your kids? And what were some of the differences or challenges that you had with your first maybe versus with your second, or just having two kids in the home versus just one?
Such good questions. I'm like, where do I start?
It's a loaded question.
The experiences, again, just from having a technically premature first.
Right.
And then a week past my due date with my second, there were surprisingly a lot of similarities just in like, okay, they were both sleepy for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One, because Miles, the younger one, is more and eats more, which helps them sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Graham was young and almost like too tired to eat because he was premature. So they've been similar experiences
for different reasons.
But I've actually been surprised at how many of those parallels exist. I think I've really had to give myself grace in being able to not play the comparison game with them all the time.
Yeah.
And to basically treat Miles as his own individual baby and not think that something's wrong or working or not working because it's different than what I experienced with Graham. And I find myself, especially in this month that we talked about that I'm in right now, of like, I have a month left. I'm thinking about sleep training.
Totally.
I'm thinking about when is it appropriate. And it's like, okay, well, Graham did this, but now instinctually, I really am trying to stay tapped into my instinct of, well, what does Miles need?
Right.
And so that, I think the comparison game, they are such different kids and every baby is different.
Yep.
And while there's similarities in their eating and sleeping patterns, it's really just about meeting them each individually. And for me, just knowing, trust, like being detached from, okay, something that worked the first time might not work this time, and still having that equal amount of confidence. But I think just the overarching theme for me and my parenting approach is trying to add more positivity into it all, taking out the perpetual complaint. Like, yes, am I exhausted? 100%. Is it worth giving any energy to that? No, because I think our kids feed off of that. What you think about comes about. Like, I'm just such a proponent for positive thinking and creating energy around that. And I don't think that there's enough of that especially
in parenting,
pregnancy, parenting, postpartum. There's so much struggle, and I don't mean to diminish how hard it is, but I also really see the value in bringing positivity to it all as much as you can.
Well, I want to put you on
think
the
it's
spot
scary
for a
to do
second
that
here too, when we're talking about like I want to really get real about this element of like comparing babies, especially siblings, or your friend who has a baby, and then like channeling your inner positivity. Yeah. Right. So like, I guess they're connected, but like the first piece is we all cannot help ourselves as moms in comparing our kids. Like we both know that we shouldn't do it and we don't want to do it, but we've done it. Like I've found myself unintentionally doing it and then being like, wait a sec, don't do that. And I just know that like every mom, even when we run a new mom support group and I have 10 moms in the room, you hear somebody say their baby's sleeping through the night and all of a sudden everyone's writing in the chat, how old's your baby? How old's your baby? Mm-hmm. Like, because you're just, you can't help yourself. So almost like you can't stop an unintrusive thought, or you can't stop like the worries or the rabbit hole. Like you can acknowledge it. So I guess my question for you is, do you have advice on like how do you actually stop yourself from comparing your kids as just a real mom, like not medical professionals over here? Mm-hmm. And how do you get yourself to be positive? Because I know we all want to be positive, but right. And is this tied back to like your mindfulness training? Like any tips for other moms listening?
Yeah, I'm trying to, I think it's just about, I think it's a little bit unpopular. Like the popular thing to do in life is to complain. And like, I almost feel guilty when I talk about how much I enjoy being pregnant, because I know so many women, people very close to me, like really struggle and have nausea. And I'm grateful that it's not something that I've experienced, but I want that for everyone, for it to not be this perpetual, like I have to complain because that's what, but in my experience, sometimes I feel like I have to apologize, like you just called me out for, Jamie, of like being positive around all of this stuff, because it's not a luxury that everyone is able to experience. But I just want more of that for everyone.
Or is there more of it and people aren't sharing because it's unpopular?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, I think, also, again, the basis of hypnobirthing is that we've all been brainwashed to think that labor is this like excruciating movie theater depicted medical event that happens. And how do we create and surround ourselves with more positive stories just to know that there's a different angle? Yeah, and totally. I think that that's true in all of these categories, is just how do we surround ourselves with more positivity around this? And for me, it's just been about sharing positive experiences and being able to own that, and having empathy when people can't get there, but encouraging it as much as we can.
Or having empathy when a situation like, right, is it's that balance between like, you know, when a situation is truly hard, right? For whatever the situation is, right? But like there are things that like truly are hard. There are things that like truly are awful or exhausting. Shitty. Or right. It's, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about like some of like the worst scenarios, right? And typically what comes out of those scenarios is you oftentimes are talking to like a very like that the person going through it does tend to be very positive. Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably what you're talking about, right? It's like these, like, we don't have to find the positivity only in the worst case scenarios, right? Like we can find the positivity in the everyday things. And that doesn't mean that you have to love every moment of parenting, and there aren't moments of parenting in life that aren't hard, right? But it doesn't have to be this perpetual problem or this perpetual complaint, is what it sounds like you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you were talking about like, I don't have to, like, am I tired? Sure. Do I have to complain about being tired every day though? Like, does that have to be the focus of my day? Like, no. There's I'm a huge fan of Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely is the founder of Spanx.
Phenomenal. Yes.
She's she's like, when people ask you the question of like, who would you have dinner with? Like no thought necessary. It's Sarah Blakely.
And you better invite me.
Yeah. I mean, she's alive. I feel like people usually like bring up like people that are dead that they won't ever be able to have dinner with.
There's still hope for us to like meet her and have dinner with her.
Right. That was what I was just going to say. I will have dinner with her one day. But anyway, one of her inspirations is this guy named Wayne Dyer. Have you heard of him, Phoebe?
Very much. Yes.
Okay. So do you remember when I played this clip for you? So he obviously like is he a psychologist? something like that. But anyway, he's in the mental health field. He's no longer with us. He's passed away. But I've listened to so many of his things and was introduced to him through Sarah Blakely. But one of the things that he talks about, one of these clips is like being tired, right? And he's like, we decide that like we're going to be tired and that's going to be a bad thing before we're actually tired, right? So like we wake up in the middle of the night, I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but like we wake up in the middle of the night at 2:00 in the morning and we're like, oh, I'm up. Like this means I'm going to be so tired tomorrow because I'm up right now. And like,
hello,
if I
postpartum Emily.
Oh, I know. And if I don't fall back asleep right now, like my day is going to be so bad, right? And it's like, before you have even experienced the feeling of being tired because you just woke up and you're not actually tired yet. And you've decided now that your day is going to be so bad, right? So he talks about this, about how it's like we're deciding like how we're going to feel and what our day is going to be like before like our day has even started. And then he goes on to say like, you know who doesn't care that you're tired? Like anybody. No one. Like, and if you don't believe me, just like tell your coworker or your spouse that you're tired. Like nobody cares.
Right.
So just like stop complaining about being tired and stop talking about how this is going.
I love telling everybody how tired I am. It's like I do it all the time.
But it is, and I mean, do you remember when I played this clip for you at your house? Do you remember this?
No,
it was when you were postpartum, probably,
and I did not.
Maybe it was insensitive.
Wayne Dyer, an American self-help author and motivational
he's
speaker.
The best. I'm telling you,
All
Phoebe.
right.
I'm so happy that you know this was not planned. I am so happy that you know who this is. You can listen to his any of his stuff. Like there's the very first time I listened to him was an Audible. And he's funny. He's like
probably played him for me when I was so tired, so I didn't hear anything that you said because I was so tired.
This was years ago though. Like I honestly think you were postpartum with either Grace or Maddie. So we're talking like 6 or 7 years ago. I still think about that clip when I'm going to complain about being tired. And I'm so glad you brought this up as an example because it's like there is this moment now, almost like a discernment, right? Like a little bit of a mindfulness tool where I'm like going to complain that I'm tired and I'm like, wait, am I actually tired? Right? Like, and most of the time I don't actually physically feel tired, right? Like maybe I didn't sleep that well or woke up a little bit earlier. Maybe a kid came into my room in the middle of the night or whatever. I mean, I could complain about being tired, but like I'm actually not, right? And you're right, Phoebe. I think that there is this element of like culturally, it is more popular to talk about like, it's like this comparative suffering, right? Around like, oh, I'm so tired because my kid woke me up last night because I have a sick kid at home or whatever it is. And maybe you are, right? But I don't think there's enough of this like subconscious, bringing to the conscious surface, right? Of like, do I actually feel this way right now or not? Or am I just perpetuating this like popular ideology of like, let's just complain about how hard this is right now?
Right. I mean, it's exactly that. And back to your direct question, Emily, of like, what practice do you put into place? I think it's just that awareness of when people say, wow, you have your hands full. How are you doing? I choose to say it's really rewarding and I love watching their love. Like I choose to live into that energy. And then I really do believe that they feed off of that and they hear me talking about them like that instead of always saying I'm tired. And then their experience of me, as young as they are, like I know that they're listening and they're soaking in everything around them.
Yes, they are.
And I think that taps into their energy as kids as well. And so it's just that habit of as soon as you catch yourself wanting to go to complain. And this, something just went viral about, it might have been on the Today Show or something about a woman with her 2 kids and a man walked up to her saying, instead of like, wow, you have your hands full, he said like, you're going to have a lot of fun. And it's just, It's exact. Have you seen that clip yet?
No, I haven't seen it. I'm sure we will now, but yeah, I
have
haven't
full body chills just saying it. It's just so special, like for people to bring that energy to each other. I just want more of that because it is that too. And it's not as fun to talk about all the negative stuff. And I'm really not trying to like overlook how challenging it is. And I've had my moments of burnout and feeling overwhelmed, but I just try to compartmentalize that. And I'm not saying suppress it, like find your people, have your outlets, do something with it. But more often than not, let your language be positive and energizing rather than depleting.
This just came up in my pregnant MSG, because this one mom in the group said that she took advice from us about like who her people are and surrounding herself with the right people, because there was in particular this couple that when her and her partner went around them pregnant, they were all like doom and gloom. Or if she asked about labor
like
or experience with delivery, or experience postpartum, it was always a negative response. And so in this group, we talked about like, can you actually consider who you're surrounding yourself with? Like, can you actually just be around people that will be positive? And, or I hate this notion of like, just wait and see, or like motherhood is some like secret society. And like, once you're in it, you'll find out how horrible it is and how tired you're going to be. So I told my group this, and I always tell my pregnant moms, especially, like, when you are with somebody else who has kids, could you actually say to them, can you share one thing about your labor that you enjoyed? Or one thing about your delivery that you loved or that you liked or that you felt positive about? Or can you tell me what's one like really great thing about being a mom or a parent? Because sometimes you have to ask people for it and they are willing to give it. But back to I love when you said it's an unpopular response. Like, we're a bit wired in a sense sometimes. So like maybe to break the wiring, or like,
Yeah, we're wired to think that labor is this like thing that we're all incapable of. We're wired to think that motherhood is challenging and exhausting, and it is, but it is so much more than that. And like even with Graham turning 2 last month, the terrible twos, I'm like, that I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, do you know why he's having more tantrums now than he did a month ago? Like, he's actually in his mind more advanced than he thinks he is, and is so frustrated that he's not fully independent, that he's mad that he needs our help. Like, how interesting is that? Instead of being like, it's the same way as saying he's in terrible twos, but it's an inquisitive way of looking at it, and I actually find it fascinating. And you can meet them with more grace and patience and love them through that frustration. It's definitely more frustrating for everyone when those tantrums start, and you're like, where is this coming from? But there is science behind it, and if we can again just really commit to finding the positive in it, I think it's really refreshing.
I like the way that you're talking about this, and I think I'll wrap up with a final questioner here too, Phoebe. But I like the way that you're framing this, because this doesn't feel like you were saying, like you just mentioned, this isn't saying I'm like shoving positivity down your throat. Like, I experience burnout, I experience frustration, right? Like, this doesn't feel like obviously like a toxic positivity situation, right? Where it's like everything's always rainbows and unicorns. It's not, right? It's the acknowledgement of this being hard, and we can focus on we don't only have to focus on the things that are hard. We can focus on the things that we really are enjoying. When you do experience these emotions of, frustration or feeling burnt out, what are your tools for dealing with those feelings so that they aren't the new narrative of your life being really hard or overwhelming or frustrating?
Right. The tools that for me, I think it's having a few people that you can like fully be unfiltered with. It's finding a way to fit in something for yourself. If I'm having one of those moments, taking a shower, getting outside, getting in a 15-minute, even like pelvic floor stretching routine or something, because the windows are small.
Yeah.
Just any self-love is so important. And I like, speaking of that, when you have to kind of, if you can't fully get away for yourself, finding ways to serve yourself alongside your child. So taking the walk. My secret sauce is like taking a bath with my kids. I recommend it to anyone and everyone as much as possible, especially in those early days of like, oh, I don't have time to bathe them, but like, I don't have time to bathe myself. Do it together. It's an amazing relaxation tool. It's so special. And so just finding ways to add in some of that self-care, but just, and to have those people that you can offload on, because there needs to be space for that too.
Totally. Yeah. I love that point around the like self-love and the moment for yourself alongside your child, because I think that makes it a little bit more accessible to people who are in these like early stages of parenting. where actually like being by yourself feels really impossible. So I love that suggestion of it being
and then it can be small, like 15-minute pockets,
right?
Because sometimes we think of self-care or self-love as like leaving the house and going to a thing or a class or it's like, and then you're like, whoa, that's like so too how am I even going to do that? But it's 10 to 15 minutes of something.
Right.
It'll feel really good.
Yeah.
It's like a little
reset. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this about your story, Phoebe. I love that it started with the education around the hypnobirthing. And I love what you said at the beginning too, around like you're somebody who like hates hospitals, right? It's funny, is working as labor and delivery nurses, most of the time, most of our patients, I would argue, like this is the first time that people are experiencing like being in a hospital and staying overnight as like a hospital admission for themselves, and or maybe the experience that they had with the hospital up until that point wasn't actually something positive, right? Like maybe it was an ill family member or parent or grandparent or something,
or pain that brought you to the emergency room for something scary and unexpected.
So that sentiment of like hate, really like somebody who like hated the hospital but figured out a way to be able to have the birth that you were thinking about and planning for alongside a hospital delivery was really wonderful. Like that, I think the way that you articulated that was wonderful. Knowing that hypnobirthing was such a important tool for you in this process, what resources would you want to share? I know that we mentioned in the beginning around the hypnobirthing if people were interested in that.
It's like the book Hypnobirthing off Amazon. I think it's maybe $12. I think anyone and everyone who's pregnant or considering pregnancy or maybe considering not getting pregnant because they can't imagine birthing a baby should read the book. It's completely inspiring regardless, and men should read it too. My husband read it with me. It's very educational and really amazing to learn like what our bodies were put on this earth to do and how it's a very, like, I think that one of the stats in the books is 7 women in coma have had healthy deliveries. That is the most fascinating statistic I've ever heard, because it shows that you don't have to do anything. You just have to learn how to control your mind and let your body do the rest and not put yourself in the way.
Yeah. It's such a good point around partners reading it too, because even if you just think about it from like, an evolutionary standpoint of like men and women, oftentimes like if a man is going to see their partner in pain, like they're going to want to fix it, right?
And like help, they don't know what to do.
Yeah, help and fix it. And like fixing it in this scenario is like, maybe you just need the pain meds.
Right.
And so having other tools, understanding what the body's going through, and then being able to offer up other tools to your partner in that moment too, I think it's such an important piece also. So I appreciate you saying that, Phoebe.
Yeah, of course.
Any other resources or advice or sort of parting thoughts that you would give to people who maybe are, thinking about having their first, expecting their first, or maybe even expecting, their second?
I would say just have fun with it and surround yourself. Again, like Emily, you said, asking those positive questions to generate positive responses, you're going to find what you're looking for. And so if you're looking to be scared out of labor or scared out of having a child or scared out of having your second or third child, there's a lot of evidence towards all of that. But look for the evidence that you want and set yourself up around people and in the questions that you ask to get the good information and to get information that will just allow you to enjoy it all. It's worth the effort and everything. It's the most gratifying. Being a mom and parenting 2 boys so far is just the greatest gift that I've ever been given and given the task of doing. So I'm very grateful, and I just want more positivity for everyone to know how they can access it and they're in control of it.
Love that.
I love the line, you're going to find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much, Phoebe. This was amazing.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Yeah, thank you both.
I'm going to be very positive today. I'm feeling the vibe is running off of me.
I'll circle back with you on that, Phoebe.
2 out of 3 of my kids were up in the middle of the night last night, so it would have been natural for me to tell you how tired I am today, and I'm not going to do it.
Phoebe, I'm going to thank you now for this gift that you've given me today.
And I'm not even tired. I'm not even tired.
I know.
Here we go. Thank you for that gift, Phoebe. It's going to be a great day.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you.
Everyone else, we'll see you next week.